myregion.com. Coming to you guys with another Morning Joy podcast. Today's the 100th. 100, guys. 2 years of these podcasts. We've got a very special guest today. We've got Josh Swider, CEO, co-founder, Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs, based out of San Diego. How you doing today, my man?
Pretty good, brother. How about yourself?
I am doing well, man. It's a great Monday to be in cannabis because there are real things going on in our industry. We've got a very powerful conversation we're going to have, and I've been informed and guided and educated by my mentors to start the morning. We had a solid conversation to catch me up on the science and things going on, and I'm really excited to help people get educated. So, Josh, are you ready to dive into this today? Are you ready to unpack this?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go.
Oh, man. Okay, so Josh, you are the CEO, co-founder of a cannabis product testing lab. It's in San Diego. I was also told you have another one in Michigan?
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you are dealing with two different government systems, right? And then using consistent science as a base layer and trying to get that to adjust to the systems, correct?
That's correct. And then also I'm around in a lot of national organizations. So nationwide, I'm in cannabis. I deal with a lot of the regulations across the country. So it's not just California, Michigan. Those are direct responsibility of our labs in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a part of a lot of it. Yeah.
And you said you've been around for quite some time. How long have you been doing cannabis testing?
Coming up on a decade here.
Absolutely incredible. And your background, you were telling me you went to some, you studied various forms of, and this is where I bombed at the science, some kind of chemistry and chemical this, right? What is it again?
Well, I'm an analytical chemist. So I have a background. I went to Eastern Washington University. That's where we were talking about.
Yep.
I got a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, then Physics and Biology, and then went to UCSD and SDSU for graduate degrees. And I pretty much did hardware mass spectroscopy. These are developed novel ionization sources. Nobody understood what I just said there, but it's the instruments we use to test all this stuff. So that's where I get my passion from. It's not that passion for testing, and then I combine that with the passion for cannabis. And that's a lot of this always is why I came to this industry, because I believe in cannabis, and I don't want it to go away because we have poor testing regulations or stuff going on and we lose the science on it. I always wanted to push this forward as where I felt I could contribute, and that was the science side, public safety.
I love that because I need people like you to have your passion, to get into the science, to have this curiosity of solving problems and finding consistencies and being able to provide a foundation for people, right? I suffer from kidney stones. For those of you guys that don't know, I've had them over 17 times in my life. I am 32 years old. I have also been throwing up due to some form of weird bubbly acid reflux since I was like 13, 14. Middle school and that first 2 periods in high school, bathroom trips just to go bubble guts it up. And I don't even know why. I didn't even eat breakfast, right? And cannabis at 18, no, I was almost 19 years old. A girl that I played volleyball with started having me trying to get me to smoke for this nausea. And cannabis changed my life in that regard. And Washington's medical market was where I was able to get my baseline for what medical cannabis really was. What was crazy about it was certain strains would make my body hurt and get all tight, and it'd just be like so sativa and just like, ugh. And then other things would really relax it, right? And there was test results back then. Then the adult use hit. There was test results then, and it was some of the same labs and some new ones came on. Oregon comes on, Colorado, all these different things. And then let's fast forward to California. Talk to me about what it's like being in cannabis testing in California over the last 10 years and some of the changes. Because we've got a major problem we're going to unpack today, but I want to give people the context for how we got here, a little bit of info on you and all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, so when I started this company, it was with one business partner. We're both chemists. He has PhD in organic chemistry. I'm an analytical, and we're just kind of combined, two different people, but very, very focused on a lot of this stuff. We started banging on doors, all the Green Cross stores, being like, hey, you guys have a product on your shelf. It's not legal yet. There's no testing regulations. How about you guys test us? We can test for all these pesticides that aren't even being tested for. Let's make sure public safety is there. You know, a lot of interesting answers when I'm banging on those doors. You know, started really pushing it, getting people that interested in it, testing even just THC numbers back then. People didn't know anything, and then bringing.
It's weird how quickly people started demanding high THC. Like it was
Oh yeah.
very quickly from a consumer thing that the higher numbers somehow got correlated to a better experience.
In my opinion, that whole thing has ruined the flower industry. And people like you, just what you just said, I take to heart. I smoked this strain, it made me feel like crap. This one made me feel achy. This one makes me cures everything. But the thing is, I guarantee you're never looking at a THC number. People need to 100% stop doing it. I really think you pull that off flower. You shouldn't even have it on there. If you really want higher THC, hold your hit in for 2 seconds longer. You just tripled your THC consumption. There's papers out there that talk about that. So stop chasing those THC numbers. Find the strain that you love. I mean, THC. I mean, flower. We test flower. We're very accurate. We pride ourselves on accuracy in the industry. People know it. We've been around for a long time, and I mean, over the years, 2018, it really started pushing those numbers. I would say to go higher and higher. 20% was minimums. The stores started demanding it. Growers would be like, Josh, I need it to say 20%. Well, it says 19.9. No, if it doesn't say 20, the store won't even look at my number. It's like, that's crazy. This is This is great flower. And then you fast forward every year or two, it went up another 5%. I mean, we ended in 2022, 23 with getting calls like, hey, if my stuff doesn't say 35%, yeah, I'm not going to use you. But I mean, over these years, like I have people I've known forever that I've known personally, even after a long time. You know, I don't create results for anyone, but I have friends that I grew up with that ended up in the cannabis industry too. And in California, I'm not from California, and they called me back in like 2020, like, Josh, I need everything to say 28% or higher. They're not getting me on the shelf. They're just throwing it away. My kids can't eat anymore. And I go, leave my lab. Stop testing with me. I'll figure my own thing out. I'll keep accuracy, but don't take the food off your kid's table because we're chasing stupid ghost numbers here.
Yeah, you can't contribute to that as well. You go like I can't tell somebody what they're gonna go do or not do. You're a grown ass person, right?
Yeah.
But
at the same time, I'm not going to participate in that. Lab fraud is lab fraud. And the people have to realize that if you have scientific integrity, it doesn't matter the analyte you're analyzing. I'm not going to say I'm going to create lab fraud on THC, but not on pesticides. I mean, this is going to sound kind of stupid. I call THC inflation the gateway drug of testing. And I'm just making a pun because I don't think weed's a gateway drug anyway, but you know, like saying of that. And it's because as soon as you start doing that, then okay, well,
it is a gateway drug because just like sugar, you get a high from those money coming in, right? Yeah. Let's be real. It's exciting to get that. Oh, I got a whole new product line I got to test with you. Oh, cool. Yeah. We're gonna do it again. I got more flavors coming. I got more strains coming. Like that's more money. That's cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. Like
yeah, and then, yeah, 100%. It's that way. And then honestly, over the decade, it was the producers pushing, saying, "Hey, give me the higher numbers, give me higher numbers." I think in like 2020, maybe 2022, maybe I'll say 2022, it flipped. The new labs came online. They're calling the producers, "Hey, I'll test some of your flower for free. Why don't you check my numbers out?" And that's when you saw this thing skyrocket. Remember, you were seeing 50% THCA flower, 55.
Yeah. That shit comes out testing 27, 22. Yeah. We saw Jeters pop at like 12, right? I think on some articles a couple years ago. I think when they were
I mean, it's 100% true. There's not this magic weed out there. There's not this stuff you can create 55% cannabinoids on. There's a limit. It's science, guys. You can't grade 110% distillate either. Even if you try hard, just because you try hard in school, you have 110%, you can't create 100% composition of a product. So people like, I really hope like people start thinking about this and stop valuing those numbers. But at the same time, I'm not going to have my clients die just testing my lab. I still have flower clients to this day. In 2023, I have 2 flower clients.
24.
Sorry. In 23, I had 1. I collected 1 more this last year. Hey, props to them. Shout out to them for sticking with it because they want accuracy. They grow their product. They want to make sure they have consistency. And they said if they went, a lot of these people I remember a long time ago, they were like, hey, if I go to another lab, I'm getting 50%, 48%. Because I have true 30 almost, or 32. They'll have it right on this line between 30 and 32, but they're getting like 48s and stuff. And like, this is complete bullshit. I won't sell fraud to my customers. And they hold a hard line.
So I have 2 words that you keep saying that I hear from all labs, and the shit drives me nuts. All right. Accuracy. We're accurate. Okay. And then consistency, right? Those 2. So we're consistently accurate. I hear that we're consistent. And then there's other things. You said I've been around a long time, or this and that. I've heard that from so many people, right? But when we don't know the science, right? If I can't cook, then I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. What does that mean to me, right? And so what does accuracy from a foundational science look like in cannabis testing? What is that? What is the algorithm? How do we get 2 + 2 = 4 every time? Please help us understand that.
It's full validations. So like my lab, I own this lab. Over the last decade, I've made us revalidate everything because I'm like, guys, everyone else is giving 28% now. We must be doing something wrong. And my goal is prove what I'm doing wrong, find what I'm doing wrong, use analytical chemistry, rerun validations, rerun methods, try to tweak methods and see if I'm doing anything wrong. And we've done so much validation in the background to see if our numbers are incorrect. And I can create a higher number, and I can't. If people want to read about how to create a higher number, we just did a 3-part series last month with Beard Bros. I know that you're friends with them, and we talk about how you get these elevated numbers. I mean, there's specific things that you're doing intentionally wrong to get there. It's not by accident.
Okay, so even still, unpack it further, please. Where can someone Google this right now? Where can someone look up the algorithm, the equation, whatever it is, to be able to be like, cool, I may not know what these letters and numbers and exponents mean.
Read the Beard Bros articles. The 3-part series about Beard Bros, about flower THC inflation. I think we wrote that, me and Eric Paulson from my lab wrote that, and we did that to do it to a normal person's level, not to have to have a big scientific background or anything else. I think that's very educational if you truly want to learn about THC inflation and what's happening with it.
Ooh, well, the good thing is I just found that article in 2 clicks. Yeah. Look what I have right here, everybody. So why don't we walk through this real quick, right? Part 2 of a 3-part series on THC potency inflation. Yeah. See part 1 for a discussion on how potency inflation in California is just as bad as ever. So let's skip past the discussion of how we already know it's bad as ever, right? We're there, right? So sample mass. Walk me through when you're testing flower, when you're testing a product, what goes into that?
So what we did is, this SB 544 in the state of California is a mandated potency method that the DCC put out. So for years, we have a fully annual license, meaning that we did full validations on everything. There are 2 labs in the state of California that have a full annual license. Still, to this day, the annual license must be completed by 2025. I don't know how everyone's going to get done with that, but let's go back to what that means. Is we had a method that was fully approved and validated for THC analysis. And then the DCC kind of wrote this SB 544 to standardize the method or give everyone the exact same method so that everyone should get the same numbers.
Correct. So that was sometime last year, right?
That was the first of the year. And that big thing happened where only 7 labs could test. And this whole thing went down the line. And you saw the numbers after the first week dropped off the rail. The 30s became 20s. The 35s became 22s. The 20s became 18s or whatever have you. They just went all over the place.
Yep.
And about 2 to 3 weeks later, went straight back up. Straight back. And then that's what this article does is we went, I just did it. I'm not attacking brands. There's not one brand mentioned in there or anything because I'm not pushing this on brands. This is a science problem. This is a failed lab system problem. It's the guys with the science degrees or not, maybe that own labs or run labs that are doing this for financial reasons and not for science. And I'm pointing that out. So what I did here, we went and actually did the testing. We didn't talk about hypotheticals here. I went and acquired a bunch of product, and then I tested it in different manners. So I used iCal's method that I had validated just to prove it. Show it. Now I used the DCC's method.
iCal is you.
My method that I have fully validated.
So your multi-year revalidation system. You just did it again. You tested it against your own validation.
And then the SB 544 method, the DCC's method, the one they're mandated.
Okay, so that's 2.
2. So that those numbers give you the exact same results relatively. You have small variations between them. Good. That just shows we have consistency. It's creating an accurate number. There's other labs out there that I've done this round robin stuff with. Same thing. And then we started manipulating the data on purpose. So I commonly have heard from lab people around the industry, like either ex-employees. For whatever reason, people like to reach out to me and tell me how they do shit wrong. Or how they worked at a lab that did this wrong. And how I don't know. I'm very loud and vocal on LinkedIn and other things. And people reach out. They flock to talking to me. And I'll talk to them offline. Oh, so what did you do? Oh, so, we're only supposed to use 0.2 grams of flour every time we prep it. But we actually put 0.25 in and write down 0.2. So when we calculate it, it's wrong. So you elevate it by your addition. So when we did this, we prepped it appropriately. We prepped it with all these different ways. Oh, I purposely miscalibrated my pipettes. I made my calibrations off by 10%. All these systematic errors. And we did it in every way. And then we did comparisons like, Here's the real
God.
answer. If you use DCC method and ICAL method, it comes out, I'm just making a number, 20. Label claim is 35. It's like a choose your own adventure. If you did this, this, and that, you get 35. Maybe this person put 0.25 grams and they did a 30 mil dilution instead of the 40 they're supposed to. And look, you match exactly what it is.
Oh
and then
my God, that's so
we did
wild,
a
but it
control.
makes so much sense.
And it's so much work, I'll tell you that. This is thousands and thousands of data points. And we did this just to show what's going on. And then I hear a lot of excuses like, oh, well, my flower, when we test it, it gets packaged and we lose all the THC and then it sits on the shelf. No. I've done so many studies to prove that wrong. And it's that common thing, or the labs that are doing the fraud are like, oh, that's what happens. So what I did for a control sample, I said I have one client left. On January, I think like 10th, I tested their flower, at a compliance sample. So you compliance test, you take a representative sample, you should do it appropriately, you homogenize it, you test it. He created a result. I can't remember, maybe it was 24%. I think that's the number somewhere around there. You can look in the paper. And then we went around 3 months later, that same product that I compliance tested, I pulled off 5 different shelves around San Diego. I went in myself, bought 5 eighths, treated each eighth as one package, homogenized it, and tested it again. In all those different methods I talked about, not with the fraud.
Those two methods, correct?
ICAL method, DC method, and I also did the elevation to show what it could go to.
Okay.
And I show that it's less than, I think, 6% variance, as in like the 24 became 25 down to 23. So every time it hits within the 10% variance window it really should be, as in 20 to 22.
Now, for the record, for those of you guys that are bad at math, when something tests at 24 or 23 or 25 and it's only 1 point, 10% of 24 is 2.4. So that's 24 down to 21.6, and that's also up to 26.4, right? And so you got to think, as long as it's in between that window, that's the 10% variance. And in Colorado, it's 15, correct?
Yeah. So the variants are fine. Like they're realistic. Like so people are like, oh, the buds are so diverse. Well, this is the reality. When you sample in California, you have a sampling protocol. You should be eliminating the variants, because what you're doing, you're collecting a lot of the buds, random good ones, bad ones, or high THC, not good or bad, I shouldn't have to use that term, high THC, low THC, small, medium, big size colas. And then when you take it back to the lab, you homogenize it all. So what do you get? You get an average. And then when a package is sold, they're not putting one little bud in it that has low THC or one big bud with high THC. They're putting an eighth or a quarter, right? So if you treat those as a sample, it should match your batch, because you have an average and an average. They'll be relatively the same. You shouldn't see things testing, at compliance at 38, and then when you go buy the bag and homogenize it, you get 20. That means you had a failed system somewhere. Very
obvious. From a science standpoint, very obvious.
Yeah. I mean, THC flower inflation is something that drives me crazy, because honestly, 70% of the market in California is flower and pre-rolls, and I don't touch it. I mean, I gladly will, but I understand the perspective of what people do. You got to get on the shelf somehow. The bud tenders demanded, or buyers demanded 30% plus for a long time. It seems to be going down. The DCCs seems to be doing recalls weekly, and they're just doing recalls for potency inflation. I understand people won't, it's not a safety issue, but the thing is, it puts people out of business. It removes strains from the system. I know growers have been growing longer than most people have been alive, and they tell me, hey man, I can't even grow the strain because even with the inflated numbers, no one will buy it. But it's the best thing, and I grow it for myself still. And I'm like, this is the stuff we do. We remove it to chase a number. We create a worse product, or not. We just lose our great historical product that people love because we can't put a fake number on it. I think that ruins a system that we all shouldn't, promote. I really hope the system changes one day. I hope the consumers realize, like, you shouldn't be chasing those numbers. Find the strain you love. Find the producer you love. Find the quality that you want. Don't look at a package and be like, oh, this says 28 and this says 26. I'm buying the 28. Hold it in for 1/4 second longer.
I definitely have a lot of respect for those legacy growers, those strains. I think that's super important. But I want to make sure that we dive a little bit further into what goes into the cannabis supply chain here in California, right? Because it does come from farms, agriculture, things outside, right? These people, like with the person you were talking to growing this special strain, there are undeniable variables and factors that go into growing cannabis, and especially if you're doing it outdoors in certain regions with the historical agriculture there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a lot that can go into this. In LA, it could be dirty buildings and water. In New York, Michigan, it could be. There's so many things, right?
Yeah.
So let's go into the cannabis supply chain.
Yeah.
Brands, right? I'm a brand. Respect my region. We buy flower from companies like the Cure Company, not West Coast Cure, but the Cure. We buy companies stuff from Clade 9. We've bought in the past. We bought weed from Ember Valley. We've been trying to buy weed from Claiborne for years because we like Claiborne's genetics. Maven, we asked, right? Like, there's great weed here in California.
Definitely.
So let's talk about the process. You grow flower, right? If you are passionate, if you care, if you're investing millions and millions of dollars in time and separation from your family, I don't want to assume you're trying to do it the right way. But I'm going to assume that since most of these people I know, they really care about the quality and the consumers and this patient element, right? I hate to assume, but let's assume they're all trying to do it the right way, okay? At least some of them, most of them, the ones I'm talking about right here that I'm buying from. Now, the reason why I mention these brands by name, because these are all real people that I like, that they would all vouch and say I reached out to them or I've bought from them or that I've reviewed their weed online. One of these brands made it. A couple of them made it into their bags. One of them made it into the bag, and I tested it through a third party in Massachusetts. This was a fresh drop. I just picked up the samples, and it came out 17%. And it said 32 on the bag. The other bag, because I was blown away, I was like, there's no fucking way. The other bag, and that was my OG, by the way, 31%, 32% in California, 17 on the third party test in Massachusetts. The other one was a 35er, truly, pop 22, right? And so I was like, oh my God, this is bad because I really trust these farms. What's going on? And then I'm thinking to myself, well, I sell smalls. Maybe it's the little buds, right? The little buds. And when you think about that homogenization, you think about what's supposed to go into this testing process, the cannabis supply chain becomes a much riskier situation when you think about the science meets the supply chain. So walk me through how brands that are white labeling, like, what does that mean? We're buying weed from other people, right? Other people are making our stuff for us, right?
Yeah.
Walk people through the supply chain stuff. So that's pretty.
Yeah. So if another brand is doing it, so that brand is testing the flower. This is a lot of the stuff in bulk. So we do a lot of bulk testing in the state. So we do business to business sales for a lot of the products. I mean, that's what iCal does because we have a trusted analytical platform. We're not the best for consumer facing platform, if that makes sense, because we don't do the elevated results. But like the stuff you're talking about, so they grow the product and then they're going to get COA tested, and maybe they're choosing a lab that gives them higher results intentionally, or maybe the lab they just worked with for years slowly, gradually increase their numbers to stay up with the market. And then they're selling the product to you. So you're buying a product from a tested lab that's certified in California that is allowed to test, and they're using them to provide the testing results, and then the results are just fraudulent. So true. I don't know if they're intentionally doing it or not. That's going to be the producer. I mean, there's a lot of things that we've done in the past, so round robin studies, things like that with producers. And then the producers do know, like, hey, this actually gives me 17 results at the labs that are probably the honest labs, and then 32 at a lab that is just giving numbers. But not all producers know that. But at the same time, whose responsibility is that? That is the responsibility of the producer. Just because you're using a licensed testing lab doesn't make it in the clear for you. So that's the thing I always say as a producer, a white label or anything. It's the same thing as Nabisco cookies started using a packager. I mean, maybe I shouldn't use that name, but if like a big brand cookie manufacturer used a packager and it says 12 ounces on the bag of cookies, and then the packager's messing up and selling 8 ounces, guess who's getting the lawsuit? It's going to be the big brand is going to get a problem. This is called consumer fraud. Let it be or not. Like, I that's what I hate. One thing about it is, like, this is one of those things that'll blow up in everyone's face because you can't do consumer fraud forever. So the problem is, if everyone's this is the problem in California. Most of the labs kind of had to do this to stay around. If you were unwilling to inflate numbers, then guess what happened? Then you went out of business, or you lost the flower clients that were too important for you, or you didn't keep up with the industry. So as it kept going, it seems like it's come back a little bit down. I'll say that this year. But at the same time, the numbers you're talking about, these 20s and 25s, that's all the weed, everyone. Stop believing this 40% stuff.
Yeah.
The way cannabis it seems to be growing. So I worked with a couple people who have looked at a lot of data, like 1.5 million data points across the country, off metric or metric data. So stuff out of metric or out from states, and you kind of see this bell-shaped curve with cannabis THC. So what I mean, it's a plant, so you're gonna have diversity. If you look at it, you get this curve. In the middle of the curve, sitting around about 22 to 24%, means the probability it's going to be 20% is great. It's 50% chance, or higher. The stuff that goes over 30, you're only talking about 2 to 5% of the flower on the shelf should be that.
Yeah.
And if you test it, if you look at it and screen it, that's exactly what it comes out at. So it's these number chasings and the brands, what are you supposed to do? If you have 9 out of 10 labs giving you the number 32, how is it your fault? And then
let me interject here. So it's like, I understand the consumer fraud, right? So someone buys Respect My Region weed when I was doing that, right? And they tested it themselves. They identified that it's not what it was. Consumer fraud because it's not really what it says on the bag, right? Totally understand that. That's what we sign up for as a business, insurance, all the things, right? But I'm a small business. We're not social equity, but I'm a social. What if I was social equity? How are we supposed to test at 5, 10 different places to get to that point? At what point has the government and the system not let us down entirely and put us in that position, right? If you're only going to require me to go through one lab, and this is a state certified lab, then, and this number didn't come from me, it came from this lab, and it's a government sticker, right? Like, at some point, where does the responsibility not start to become more of like a shared element?
I 100% agree. So the failed system, like, we can start with, it's not blaming anyone. The labs should be keeping this stuff up, but we have a regulatory body in the state of California that should be looking at this stuff, that should be checking it. I mean,
we're going to get to you in a second, lab, because I hope you guys watch this. We're going to get to you guys in a second.
Yeah, they should be. I think you're seeing this year it happening. I mean, we're 8 years, 9 years in. I don't know what it is now.
Let's just say from 17 and 18 to now, right? That's, I think, 6 years.
And now we're starting to see enforcement on this. They're starting to do recalls in California for potency inflation. There are labs getting suspensions. There are labs getting fines. This is all public record, everyone. You can look at who in California is getting these citations. You can read about their citations. You can read about the details of citations. And the very interesting thing is these labs are now getting in trouble. So, like, anyone testing this product with these labs, I mean, take a look at it. That's free. You're not paying to do that. You don't have to pay another lab to take a look and read some documents and understand the labs that you're working with. And that's the thing. I'm not saying leave your lab. Don't trust anyone. You do your due diligence. You know what I mean? And I understand what has to get done to get on a product. And I hope this goes away. But you're seeing action getting taken and a change happening right now. I think in the next 6 months, you're going to see major changes. Flower is going to come back down to reality in California. There's nothing wrong with low THC weed, everyone. Stop saying that or thinking that. Doesn't mean it's bad or good. I think that's the misconception that the industry needs to get over, especially in California.
And plus, too, it's not for us to really say if it's bad or good for someone else. This shit's different for everybody. I don't drink every liquor or beer. I don't drink every soda. I don't drink every juice. Stuff tastes gross to me. I don't actually, myself personally, I'm half Mexican. I don't eat tomatoes, avocados. I don't eat pickles. I don't eat a bunch of shit that you would expect someone stereotypically of me and my descent to eat. I'm the weird one. So guess what? I don't like most of the shit that other people like too. So I'm with you on that. But I don't want to hearing you give this credit to the state and their enforcement recently. I want to pull that back a little bit because I don't really feel like they deserve any form of credit for how delayed that action is. I'm a patient first. First off, don't look at the Raiders and the frustration, the tone. Don't focus on the immaturity and how we communicate. Focus on the fact that I'm a human. And in America, we have basic human rights. And our governments are supposed to protect those, right? And you look at the fact that they've been not doing any recalls, not busting the labs consistently, not forcing the structure for years, and that they rushed this system. I will side with the legacy people and say in this one instance for sure, and be like, this was a rushed program, and it certainly left people behind and impacted a lot of people negatively. But there's a lot of great stuff too. The fact that I can go buy this and get drinks and have so many products in such a open, capitalistic, competitive market, right? There are some greatnesses here. But you're telling me that recalls just happened and stuff that was I read in that article that a product failed And this brand has failed numerous times. It was Grizzly Peak. They failed numerous times. It's just what it is, right? And I've bought Grizzly Peak in the past. They did a collaboration with Soldier Boy. I reviewed it online. But at what point did I buy weed, right? And it might have been whatever, right? But that recall wouldn't have happened for months, if not 6 to 8 to 10 months after the fact. That's the problem that I have here is these things are happening so far down the line. It's already gone. It's already been smoked.
Yep. That's the problem. I'm not necessarily giving credit to the DCC or anyone else. I'm saying there's change happening. And that doesn't mean credit's given to anyone. I'm in the exact same situation. I've been yelling louder than most people in the state of California. I've been asking for regulation. I'm asking them to knock on our door, give us audits, may go audit the rest of the people. I've written audits and sent them to the state.
Yes. This reminds me. Shout out to Bill at Beard Bros. I'm just going to show him some love for gaming me up. He specifically mentioned, and I believe I read this as well, you have filed numerous complaints. You have helped bring light and awareness to things like this happening countless times, and to the point where they actually checked on your ass to make sure that you were doing it right instead of some other ones, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've always pushed for. I mean, I've been pushing for this. I'm probably one of the louder people in the country, across the country, trying to push this forward and saying, hey, we have a broken lab system, fix it. We have to start there. You can't blame all the brands because the same thing. You mentioned Grizzly Peak. I think, if I remember correctly, that Grizzly Peak recall, that was a white label product, as in they bought it from someone else, like you just were describing, put it under brand Grizzly Peaks because they didn't have enough ground, or that strain they wanted it.
Very common for people to have.
So now they trusted a COA of a lab that probably gave them fraudulent results or something happened, or I don't know if it was lab or if it was mix up or whatever it has to be, but they get put in the spotlight and the blame. But in my opinion, the blame is on the failed lab system. It should have been caught in R&D. It should have been caught in compliance and never made it to the shelf. Grizzly Peak, I don't think is intentionally being, I want to put this on the shelf. No. You get what I'm saying? So,
man, these brands as people, like I get, man, you really you think about where we're at in a society. At what point are people that we know within 5 to 10 humans of us, bro, where they're taking money and specifically creating a public-facing brand in a consumer-facing market, and that's a new one that's highly criticized everywhere in every way, to go hurt people? You're telling me people are investing dollars just to go hurt people these days and do it in a public-facing, real brand way? Come on, man.
Well, I mean, I'm going to stand on a different point, but this is a totally different topic. We're not going to discuss synthetic.
We can get on that too. You know why I say that? Do you want to know why I say that? This is why I say that. Because for them to even get online to be a legal brand, those cameras that they have at their facility cost $100,000, $150,000, $180,000. I've heard cameras at a grow facility $240K before. And so it's you're going to invest all this money to then just go hurt people.
But the thing is, go look at like citations. Go look at citations in all these states. Oh, the cameras haven't been on in a year. The cameras get turned off when we're looking at this exact product.
I feel that, but it's not everywhere, though.
Going on. I mean, I'm not saying
but it's not everywhere, though.
What's that?
I said that's not everywhere, though, because I've been into big brands, and I know that they backdoor, and it's they still got cameras on. They just got a whole different.
So this is the thing. There are people doing it right. There are great actors in this industry. But the thing is, it's getting harder to operate when you operate versus people that are not doing it right, or that are, the same thing. Like we're talking about these pesticide things. That's a big topic we haven't really touched on, but we're going to get to it here in a second. That I know we are. This whole thing is if a brand says, "Hey, I just need it to pass," and gets to pass and puts it on a shelf, because what's going to happen? They're going to lose, $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, whatever it is. But it's all packaged there, and that means they have to throw it away. There's no remediation for this stuff. It means it's going in the garbage. What is that? Maybe that means they can't turn on their light bill next month. Maybe they can't pay their employees.
You're saying that there's a lot of that going on at this point that forces
them to use a lab they know is going to pass. I mean, back in 2018, if people saw how bad the shelves were, I mean, it was bad. I would say 80% fail rate on the shelf in the legal state of California. In 2018.
Oh wow!
I have a lot of testing data back then, and it was bad. And it's just it was just because labs were just starting. They probably weren't seeing stuff. I don't know what their excuse is, but I'll tell you this. When I looked at a product on the shelf, it would all fail. 80% would for the distillate market. It's utterly insane to me.
So let's get into that part right here, right? You're talking about previous data, but let's bring it back to where we're at today. Quote unquote, the Times and WeedWeek purchased dozens of cannabis products from retail stores, then tested them at private labs. Out of 42 products tested, 25 had concentrations of pesticides above either state allowed levels or current federal standards for tobacco. I want to unpack this a little bit and bring context to it. One, every state, America has different rules for pesticides, chemicals, all these different things, importing, exporting, all this stuff, right? And in California, at one point, I remember it saying that this is a pretty stringent state for certain things. That I remember there was a point where like I remember hearing that compared to other places, like I probably like where I'm from, right? But I want to get inside. I want to learn, what are these pesticides? What do, like, you don't have to break down all the different ones and the imported ones from whatever countries and all these things, but what a pesticide could be lemon water, technically. No?
No, that's not what we're testing for. So in the state of California, there's 66 pesticides, herbicides that are tested for. It was a list that was developed back, almost a decade ago. And it's just, they were pulling what are the common things being used in cannabis or around cannabis. And the list isn't updated. I mean, we've been sitting on a decade of this. If you have 66 pesticides that you can't use, do you realize how many you could use? Because it's not being tested for and no one would ever see it. There's thousands.
Oh,
so
wow.
When you go back and do this is the problem with a lot of this. And I 100% agree. I get these comments, I get hate, I get yelled at. People are like, how do you know it's going to be harmful? Well, you don't always know it's going to be harmful. You don't, because they're not actually studied. So a lot of these pesticides are studied. How are they studied? They're studied for the specific product they're meant to be used on, because we have a whole regulated pesticide industry. If you grow tomatoes, you're allowed to use certain concentrations or certain pesticides, and then you can eat it. The problem with cannabis, not the problem per se, but the problem when we look at this to do studies in cannabis, none of this stuff is normally for inhalation. Tobacco has the most realistic equivalence to it, but let's all remember where tobacco came from. Big tobacco regulations, they were developed with big tobacco in mind. But let's kind of go past that. There's not a lot of the studies, like the university studies when you inhale smoking or doing vaporizing any of these pesticides. What happens? That's when you can create dangerous byproducts from combustion of the pesticide, anything else. But this is the thing with it. A lot of these pesticides, they do have lower action levels in California sometimes. 100 parts per billion common, non-detect. But a lot of this, the study, so just, I want to make this clear. I did not write WeedWeek. Did not write LA Times. I did not test those data points for any of that stuff. I'm not their third-party testing lab. I have
RMR exclusive, everybody. I didn't know that either.
I did shelf studies that maybe are in this thing with other organizations. I've worked in this industry for a long time. I got contacted by different organizations that asked me to do shotgun studies. So looking at these pesticides or just safety of products on shelves. But going back to the pesticide stuff, this is the way normally health is operating. You caution on the side of less until you prove it's safe, because you don't want to go backwards. And this is one thing that really drives me and aggravates me in this industry is we are making weed and cannabis determined to be it's a safe, 100% safe product. We're making it federally legal, we're trying to push federal legalization, but you have state legalization, and people go into a store and they're saying, this is tested, this is safe. I mean, the DC spent $5 million on a campaign recently to say the product in the store is safe.
Billboards.
Because it's tested.
Billboards and influencers. Billboards
5 million, yeah. So we're saying it's tested and safe. Let's make sure it's tested and safe, right? But this is the thing. We don't want a fallacy that you're going to go to the store with a medical condition and you're consuming this cannabis. And then in 20 years down the line, we're going to blame cannabis for some kind of ailment you get or a lung problem, but it really was the pesticides or it really was something else. And then what do? We kill cannabis. And that's why I tell people that you got to start making sure the product is safe and throw away the bad products unsafe, because we don't want to get down 10 years down the road. And guess what? There's no more cannabis for anyone. Ask tobacco how it's going. Ask how they're going with cancer and lung cancer. Tobacco took a huge hit. You think cannabis is too big to take a huge hit?
Yeah.
It is. So we don't want that to go the wrong way. Let's make sure an error on the side of caution. I'm a member of ACIL, American Council for Independent Laboratories. We wrote a harmonization document of how to write the pesticide regulations across the country based upon the scientific levels or scientific what we can achieve scientifically. And we wrote, I think it's a 58-page document on how to do this. And we sent this out to all the state regulators and things like that. The problem is with the states, they need the ability to change. And this, I know we all point fingers at regulators, and I'm one of those people who've been doing it forever too. But sometimes you got to remember, they're government employees working with a boss or someone that's up higher than them. They can't make the changes they want because it's written in a rule or written in a regulation. And then, oh, guess what? It takes 6 months to change a regulation, or 2 years, or before they can take action. And I guess I have come around to this. I'd be compassionate with some of the regulators. I think they know what's going on, but they just don't have the means to fix it. It's illegal. It's the same thing as like you see a crack house selling crack to kids on the corner. It takes them 2 years to shut it down because they have to do a major investigation and they have to do 50 controlled buys. You know what I mean? You see all this stuff, and it's just like it's the legal system that's failed us a lot of times. Yeah. You have to prove so much. And this is one thing I say, and that let's stop as an industry waiting for the DCC to fix our problems. Let's do it as an industry. You make sure the screening's done. You stop selling, not you, but we stop doing tainted products. Anything's tainted, then you get rid of it. You stop putting it into another system. You kind of figure it out. If there's producers that are producing highly contaminated product all the time, then guess what? Stop selling it on your shelves, dispensaries. I mean, I'm sorry. I know people lose their business, but at the same time, they need to do their due diligence or fix or call out the problem. Do recalls if you find out, if you're a brand. Don't wait for the DCC to force it.
I'm not sitting here suggesting this, but the retail marketer in me here in California knows that, some of them brands that popped on there, 2 of them are the 2 biggest in the country. I don't think they're going to be getting pulled off shelves anytime soon.
I'm not saying to do it to them. I'm saying as an industry, you can fix it yourself. I'm not promoting that those brands be pulled off. Those brands can do their own internal investigations on that.
But I believe a lot of that
is brands should take responsibility for themselves. That's what I'm saying. Brands should take responsibility for themselves. Not wait for
I agree with that for sure. Now I wanted to touch on we've spoke on flower this whole episode. You are known as a very honest, authentic, and accurate individual for vapes, or aka oils, right? Heart and edibles, right? And beverages and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about, so flower is 60, 70, 80% of the market, in terms of like what people pay attention to, but vapes have caught up in terms of sales, right? And so now we want to talk about what goes into vapes, right? So I'm gonna do a little something for a second. It's gonna be distillate is made with trim, cured resin is made with dried flower, typically trim with nugs here and there, right? Usually decent material is the goal. Otherwise, it's like, why would you waste it? And then live resin is flash frozen, full grown flower. You chop it, you stuff it, you freeze it really quickly, and then you pull it out and extract with it. Those are all butane extractions, correct? Typically,
you can do a few different things.
Yeah, PHO, CO2 versions.
For distillate is normally like an oil or ethanol.
Alcohol, right? Ethanol. Yeah, ethanol. So you got a couple different things there. That's all solvents. Then you get rosin, which is you take weed, you can do dried, cured stuff, you can do frozen stuff, you wash it, whatever, and then you press it, heat and pressure. No chemicals, no solvents, no nothing except water and ice, right? So concentrated, right? THC, cannabinoids in a concentrated amount. What is that like in the world of pesticides?
So it's the exact same thing you just said. You concentrate them. So it's this amazing thing. So that's why it's always harder to make distillate or anything else or the concentrates, is you're taking this product like this flour or trim and you concentrate it by a factor of like 10. You can kind of think about it. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 10 to 13. So when you see it and you're like, okay, well, look, this flour passes for this pesticide at 80 parts per billion. Let's just say it was numbers, and then you concentrate it by a factor of 13. That 80 parts just became a part per million. So now it's a dangerous level that you shouldn't necessarily be consuming. I'm saying that just based on regulations. I'm not a health physician saying I've done the study to say this specific pesticide, but those studies will get done one day. Well, when do we need that? You need federal legalization to fund the government to do this stuff. So we got a ways out, but I err on the side of caution as a scientist. I tell my family don't smoke stuff that's not tested by my lab, to tell the truth. But because I get very worried about this stuff because you end up seeing it. So we get concentrated pesticides, and that's the hard part of this extraction game, is you're in the state of California. So pesticideinfo.org, I'm not plugging anyone. That's a very interesting website. If you want to go look at what pesticides are being sprayed in what county at what concentration that's reported to the DPR, you very well could. I used to play this game with trim producers. I would play, I guess, where you're located based upon
Yeah,
your
because
pesticide
you can see patterns of certain things, right?
Yep, they use this one heavily, and like you'll see it outdoor grows. I mean, back in like 2016, 2018, I bet you that trim was grown in this county, and they're like, how'd you know that? And I'm like, because I see the pesticide ratio. It's just the overspray from the county, and it gets into them. I mean, that's the reality. And then when you do this concentration step, but some of these pesticides are meant like there's one, the chlorphenicol. That's a GC analyzed pesticide that some people weren't doing by GC. There's a lot of errors on it. It's a hard analyte per se, but it's missed a lot. The thing about chlorphenicol, it's a pesticide that's stated it should only be used on ornamental flowers, nothing edible or consumed. It's actually a very hazardous chemical. But this is popping up all over cannabis because they have grows like those the greenhouses are next to other greenhouses. What do they grow? Ornamental flowers. They grow the roses, the tulips, the things like that, and they're spraying the shit out of their flowers. Excuse my language. And then it goes into the guy next door, and then it goes on their flower, and it's a low level, and then it gets caught. And then we trim up the trim, we sell the trim, we do the concentration. Now the chlorphenicol is at a part per million. You certainly shouldn't be consuming that. You say I'm just giving one pesticide example. Yeah, but I mean this is the reality of it. And then also there a lot of times with these anyone producing this stuff, they'll buy a product that says like organic pesticide or organic pest removal. And still to this day, the growers don't read it for whatever reason. You flip it over on the back or you buy it, you look at the SDS, the safety data sheet, and it says it has 6 pesticides in it. They're listed on the list of California, but they've been throwing it in bombs. I mean, after that whole the SB 554, the new potency method, a lot of labs lost the ability to test flower instantly. We had an influx of flower operators kind of come back and like, hey, Josh, I need something. I love you guys forever, but everyone's going to go back down. We'll try again. And we had growers that were just failing nonstop for pesticides. I've been growing in the same room for 8 years or 5 years now after I've used you. I've been using this lab. I'm not putting labs out there. And I'm like, what? This pesticide is so high. What have you been using? They're like, well, I've been using, my head grower said to use this for the last 3 years. I'm like, send me the name of it. Send me it. And then it's exactly these pesticides popping up that they're failing for. And like, well, the other lab doesn't see it. And I'm like, it's still there. We're still hurting the consumer, right? So this is the stuff that drives me crazy. And then this is why we need the enforcement or something. You need someone policing the industry and looking at it and doing the stuff. So like the stuff Alex Harpland, and I believe it's LA Times and WeedWeekly page that they seem to have done. I mean, I can't speak for them. Again, I didn't do what they did. They went around just shopped shelves and then tested the product, right? And this is based upon a lot of concentrates and things like that. But I mean, what I've done over the years too is like we worked with organizations that shotgun approach. And what I mean by that is they'll go out and buy two SKUs of every brand. I mean, I have a lot of published data in Michigan too. I mean, I'll say that. I've worked with various companies out there that have been doing this to test 60 brands at a time. And then they see how much stuff's synthetic, but that's a different story for a different day. Let's stick back on the
we can revisit that one another time. Michigan don't want to smoke today. Michigan don't want to smoke today.
Yeah, so
we'll focus on California. It's already part of California's on fire anyway, so I hope everyone's okay up there.
Yeah, and then so the pesticide stuff, it's shotgun approach. People looked at it. There's a lot of brands that are out there clean. And then the thing is, you're talking about this. People acquire trim from someone else, and then they extract it. And then, so a brand clean, unless you're doing it due diligence as a brand and a producer, you got to make sure everything's clean every time. Every time's a new game. I remember back a long time ago, people were like, can we just, test once now that we've proven this works? And I'm like, it doesn't work because you're using a variable input product every single time.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. Like you have some of these great brands that they've been doing a long time that they spend more money on R&D testing than they do any compliance testing. Why? Because they're ensuring every product that goes through their system is clean. I'm not promoting to spend more money with my lab. I'm promoting for clean cannabis so this industry doesn't die one day.
Do you have other labs that you do trust out there right now?
Yes. There's
a couple. Can we show some love so that way it doesn't seem like an ad?
And Resco, they've been doing this longer than most people, 80 years. They were in other industries. Zach over there, they're out there holding a hard line. There's a few others, but that's who I would name myself right now because there's a few in the state. And I honestly don't want to put any labs on blast or anything like that. I think people are trying sometimes, but I understand hard times come up. But honestly, public safety is what all of us should be here for. It's not money. It's not I got a degree or a law degree or something, and now I own a testing lab and I pass all the results. I don't care. I mean, you should be a scientist protecting the safety. I really hope it goes
Absolutely.
back to that.
Well, big shout out to you, Josh, for being here with us today. I really appreciate it, man, and thank you for, as you said, standing the line there, for the patients. I think it's really important, this issue. I really appreciate your time to help break down the various parts of the supply chain and also teach us a little bit about the various pesticides and the test that what goes into testing and these requirements, and also too how the system is also clunky and hard to shift and change, right? It's these perspectives in each of these different areas of the cannabis industry, the sector, that people don't truly have good visibility on. It's very easy to point fingers at the brands mentioned in the LA Times article. It's very easy to point fingers at these labs, but it is an imperfect system. And as I hear constantly, we are building the plane as we fly it in cannabis, correct?
Yeah,
And so
100%.
I appreciate you joining us here today. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with people before we get out of here?
I mean, I really push it back to really people, the industry, step up, figure out what labs are giving correct results. If they're using potency inflation and stuff as a tool, stop using them, start talking to other people, check with other labs, confirm some stuff, make sure you're not having a systemic problem. The brands, you're producing products for customers and people that are using this for medical and even if it's not sold as medical, that's what they use it for. Make sure it's safe. Let's not hurt the people that are providing your business the opportunity to thrive in this industry anyways.
We've been a victim to the inflated test results. I sell to retailers. I can confirm they ask for the 30%ers and they definitely lean on you. If it doesn't even make sense. Like I've literally had that shrug. Like I can, what am I supposed to do? And this is the reality of what the consumers have been trained to. So I appreciate you, Josh. Again, thank you for being here. Everybody, thank you guys for watching. This was another episode of the RMR Morning Joint Podcast. This was episode 100. We do have cannabis for sale in Washington and California. Please ask for Respect My Region RMR Legacy Smalls at your local retailers. And Josh, I look forward to following this and supporting as well. Thank you guys, everybody, for watching. Talk that shit. Do whatever you got to do. But we will be back with more episodes every Monday. See you guys.